Let me take you back to the morning. The sea fog clung to the vines, like a secret it didn't want to give up. I was 57 then, though the mirror tried to convince me otherwise, with its silver lies in my hair. My name is Evelyn Shaw, and the vineyard, Shaw's Rest, has been my heartbeat since the day Richard pressed my hand into the damp earth of the first row and said, "This is ours now, Evie. Every drop of sweat, every prayer." That dawn, I walked the aisles alone, boots sinking into the cool loam, tasting the air the way a mother tastes her child's fevered brow. The grapes were swelling, heavy with the promise of a vintage that could silence every critic who'd whispered "widow's folly" when Richard's coffin went into the ground. I touched the clusters, Cabernet, tight and perfect, and felt him beside me, the way you feel a ghost in the marrow. The workers were already stirring. Old Marco waved from the press house, his apron stained purple like a badge of honor. "Morning, Doña Evelyn. The barrels from 19 are singing." I nodded, but my eyes were on the tasting room terrace where the banners fluttered. Shaw's Rest, Harvest Launch. Lena had designed them, my daughter-in-law, sharp as winter frost, with a laugh that could sell sunlight. She was due to host the press at 10. Daniel, my eldest, would handle the numbers. Always the numbers. He'd inherited his father's height, but none of his stillness. Daniel moved like a man forever, late to a meeting with his own conscience. I was pouring coffee in the kitchen when Thomas, our youngest picker, barely 20, burst through the screen door, hat clutched to his chest. "Senora Shaw, pardon, but I saw Lena." "Lena's upstairs," I said, not looking up. "She's choosing earrings to match the new labels." "No, senora, at the lake house. Yesterday, I was fishing with my cousin. Clear as day," she waved from the porch. "Same red scarf." "But," he faltered, "she was here too, yes? The television crew filmed her by the fountain." The mug trembled in my hand. Coffee sloshed over the rim, scalding my wrist, but I didn't feel it. "Impossible," I said. The word tasted wrong, like a corked wine. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step a question. Lena's door was ajar. She sat at the vanity, brushing out hair the color of wet sand. "Morning, Mum," she sang, using the name that still startled me with its sweetness. "These sapphires, or the pearls?" I studied her reflection. The scar, thin, white, from a childhood fall off a pony was there, just below her left ear. The wedding band glinted on the correct hand, yet something, the way she tilted her head, expectant, like a woman waiting for applause. Lena tilted for no one. "Pearls," I said. My voice sounded far away. "They photograph better." She smiled, and I smiled back, but inside I was counting heartbeats, the way I count fermentation days. By 9, the courtyard brimmed with journalists, their cameras hungry. Lena, my Lena, moved among them like a queen, describing the new rosé with poetry she'd stolen from Richard's old journals. I watched from the balcony, arms folded tight to keep the trembling inside. At 9:47, my phone buzzed. A text from Marco. "Lake house porch, red scarf, same woman." Attached was a grainy photo, time-stamped 9:42. The figure was unmistakable. I looked down at the terrace. Lena was laughing at something a reporter said, head thrown back, throat exposed. The scar caught the light. 2 Lenas, 1 vineyard. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house creaked like an old barrel giving way. I went to the office, Richard's office, and opened the ledger Daniel had left on the desk. Numbers danced, red and black. A withdrawal I didn't authorize. A signature, L. Shaw. The L curled differently, like a vine trained left instead of right. I poured a glass of the 05, our anniversary vintage, and let it breathe. The scent rose, black cherry, sea salt, a whisper of smoke. Richard's ghost sat across from me. Trust your nose, Evie. I did, and it smelled wrong. The next morning, I found the second anomaly. In the employee logs, 2 access cards scanned within 3 minutes, both with Lena's photo, both at 6:12 a.m. One card showed pearl earrings, the other, tiny gold hoops. I closed the logbook and felt the first crack in the dam of my certainty. My son, my Daniel, who'd once cried when I pruned his favorite peach tree, was hiding something, and he was using my daughter-in-law's face to do it. I stood at the window, watching the fog burn off the vines. The sea beyond was iron gray, restless. Somewhere out there, the real Lena might be waving from a porch I'd never seen. Or perhaps the woman downstairs pouring coffee for strangers was the stranger. Either way, the vineyard, my husband's blood in the soil, my sweat in every bottle, was under siege. And I, Evelyn Shaw, widow, mother, keeper of legacies, would not lose it to shadows wearing familiar faces. I slipped the logbook into my cardigan pocket and went to find Maya. My youngest had always been the blade to Daniel's velvet glove. If war was coming, I'd need her steel. But first, I needed proof. And proof, like wine, must be pressed gently, or it bruises. The next week unfolded like a slow fermentation, each day adding a layer of sourness I couldn't name. I began waking before the roosters, slipping into the office while the house still slept. My notebook, leather-bound, a gift from Richard on our 30th, became my confessional, page after page filled with tiny, precise notes. Tuesday, 7:14 a.m. Lena signs for delivery of new oak barrels. Real Lena hates French oak, says it bullies the fruit. Wednesday, 11:03 a.m. Lena laughs at investor's joke about sulfites. Real Lena would have corrected his pronunciation. I underlined real until the pen tore the paper. Daniel noticed nothing. He breezed in each morning with spreadsheets and coffee breath, kissing my cheek like a dutiful son. Morning, Mum. Investors love the new campaign. Lena's a genius. His eyes slid past me to the window, where the vines glittered like green glass. I began timing his absences. He'd leave for meetings in town and return with city dust on his shoes and a tightness around his mouth. Once, I caught him in the cellar counting barrels, fingers tapping like a man counting debts. Lena's at the printer, he said when I asked why she wasn't with him, finalizing the foil stamps. But the printer was closed on Thursdays. I knew. Richard and I had argued with old Mr. Alvarez about it for 20 years. That afternoon, I drove to the lake house. The road wound through eucalyptus groves, their scent sharp as betrayal. The cabin sat on a spit of land jutting into the water, windows shuttered like closed eyes. No car in the drive, no red scarf on the porch. I knocked anyway. The sound echoed hollow. Inside, a single coffee mug on the counter, lipstick the shade Lena wore only for galas. I opened the fridge. Half a bottle of our Sauvignon Blanc, corked wrong. Lena never recorked. She finished what she opened. On the table, a sketch pad. Lena's bold strokes, label concepts, swirling vines. But the handwriting beneath was smaller, hesitant. Test audience preferred gold foil. Recommend pivot. Not Lena's voice. I took the pad. Evidence. Back home, I found Lena in the tasting room, swirling a glass of the 19 Merlot. Sunlight caught the scar. Fainter today, or was the light wrong? She smiled when she saw me. Ev, taste this. The investors want to bottle it early. I took the glass. The wine was sound, but her fingers, nails, painted a muted coral. Lena's were always bare. She said Polish, chipped in the dirt. Delicious, I lied. Daniel's lucky to have you. Her smile faltered. Just a flicker. He says the same about you. That night, I called Maya. My daughter answered on the second ring. City noise behind her. Mom, it's late. I need you home. My voice cracked like old leather. Bring your law books. She arrived the next morning, briefcase in one hand, coffee in the other. Maya had Richard's eyes, storm gray, unreadable. She hugged me hard, smelling of courthouse corridors and determination. Show me, she said. We sat in the office until the lamps burned low. I laid out the notebook, the sketch pad, the access logs. Maya's brow furrowed deeper with each page. 2 signatures, she murmured, holding the documents to the light. Same hand, trying to be different. And these access cards? She tapped the photos. Someone's playing a very expensive game of dress-up. Daniel, I said. The name tasted like vinegar. Maya didn't flinch. We need more. Bank records, emails. If he's moving money, there'll be a trail. I hesitated. He's my son. He's stealing your legacy. Her hand covered mine. Let me help you prune the rot. The following days, I became a ghost in my own house. I mirrored Lena's schedule, noting every discrepancy. She ordered lavender sachets for the gift shop. Lena loathed lavender. She wore heels to the crush pad. Lena lived in boots. One evening, I found Daniel in the library, phone to his ear, voice low. Tell her it's just a stunt. Double the fee if she nails the investor lunch. He saw me and ended the call. Mom, couldn't sleep? Bad dreams, I said. About wolves in the vineyard. His laugh was too loud. Plenty of those in boardrooms. I smiled, but my hand slipped into my pocket, fingers closing around the voice recorder Maya had given me. The final thread came on a Tuesday. An email from the investment fund, forwarded to me by mistake, cc'd elshawshawsrest.com. Subject, final signatures required by Friday. Attached, a management transfer agreement. My signature block was blank, but beside it, Lena's name was already typed. I stared until the screen blurred. Friday, 3 days. I found Lena in the greenhouse, misting orchids. Big week, I said casually. Daniel says you reviewed the new contracts. She didn't look up. He handles the boring stuff. I just smile for the cameras. The orchids trembled under her spray. Real Lena would have named each bloom Cattleya, Phalaenopsis, Dendrobium. This woman called them pretty. That night, I drove to the lake house again. This time, lights glowed behind the curtains. I parked in the shadows and watched. A figure moved past the window. Red scarf, familiar silhouette. She stepped onto the porch, phone to her ear. Tell Daniel I'm going stir-crazy. When can I come home? My Lena. Alive. Trapped. I dialed Maya. Get here. Now. And bring the cavalry. As I waited, I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel. The vineyard scent clung to my clothes. Earth, salt, crushed grapes. Richard's voice whispered through the dark. Trust your nose, Evie. It smelled like war. I sat in the dark of my car until the moon climbed high enough to silver the lake. My Lena, my real Lena, paced the porch, phone still pressed to her ear, voice rising in frustration. Daniel, I haven't seen sunlight in 3 weeks. The sketches are done. I want to come home. A pause, then softer. What do you mean? 1 more week. I wanted to burst from the car, to wrap her in my arms and drag her back to the vineyard where she belonged. But Maya's warning echoed. We need the whole root, Mum. Pull too soon, and the weed grows back. So I watched, and I listened, and I recorded every word on the little black device Maya had slipped into my palm like contraband. When Lena finally went inside, I drove home through the eucalyptus tunnel, the scent now choking. The house was quiet, but Daniel's study light burned. I crept past, heart hammering like a press at crush. Through the crack in the door, I saw him hunched over his laptop, fingers flying. Yes, the signatures are secured, he whispered into a headset. Mother's is the last piece. Tell the fund we close Friday." He ended the call and rubbed his temples. For a moment, he looked like the boy who'd fallen off the tractor at 12, knee split open, crying not from pain, but from fear he'd ruined harvest. I almost went to him. Almost. Instead, I slipped into the hallway closet and waited until his footsteps faded upstairs. Then I entered his study. The air smelled of his cologne, cedar and desperation. On the desk, a folder labeled confidential, Shaw's rest equity transfer. Inside, the agreement. My signature block stared up at me, blank and accusing. But beneath it, a second document, a pay stub made out to Elise Moreau. Amount, $25,000. Memo. Phase 1, Brand Replication Campaign. Elise. The name struck like a bell. I'd seen her once, months ago, at the San Francisco Wine Expo. A promotion model, pouring our rosé, face a mirror of Lena's, but for the eyes, hazel, not Lena's green. Daniel had lingered too long, laughing at her jokes. I'd thought nothing of it. Now I knew. I photographed every page with my phone, hands trembling so badly the images blurred. Then I found the email chain. Daniel to an unknown address. She's perfect. Scar's a problem. Makeup covers it. Keep the real one at the lake until Friday. Double the retainer if she asks questions. The real one? My daughter-in-law, caged like a songbird, while a counterfeit sang her songs. I was still in the study when dawn crept through the shutters, painting the walls blood red. Daniel found me there, coffee in hand, eyes red from no sleep. "Mom?" he startled. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." I closed the folder. Bad dreams about signatures. His smile flickered. "Paperwork's a nightmare. Let me handle it." I stood, slow, deliberate. "Oh, I intend to handle it, darling. Every last drop." That afternoon, I drove to the city. The address on Elise's pay stub led to a sleek loft in Soma, all glass and exposed brick. I waited across the street until she emerged. Red scarf, Lena's walk but with a model's sway. She hailed a cab. I followed. She went to a salon, then a boutique, my boutique, where Lena's designs hung like trophies. The clerk greeted her as Mrs. Shaw. Elise tried on a silk blouse, twirled for the mirror. The scar was gone, concealed under layers of foundation. I entered. "Lovely color," I said, "though Lena prefers emerald." She froze. Our eyes met in the mirror, hers wide, mine ancient with rage. "You're," she started. "Her mother-in-law," I finished. "And you're wearing her face like a party mask?" She bolted. I didn't chase. I had what I needed. Confirmation. Back home, Maya waited in the cellar, surrounded by barrels like a general in a fortress. "We have 48 hours, she said. "Daniel's pushing the investor lunch to Thursday. He wants your signature before the board meeting Friday." I handed her the photos, the recordings, the pay stubs. "He's selling my vineyard to pay gambling debts. $500,000, Maya. Poker, horses, God knows what else." Maya's jaw tightened. "We'll bury him in paperwork, but we need Lena, the real one." We drove to the lake house at dusk. Lena opened the door in paint-splattered overalls, eyes swollen. When she saw me, she crumpled. "Ev, he said it was for my health, that I was burning out, but the emails, someone's using my name." I held her while she sobbed, her tears soaking my shoulder like rain on parched soil. "We're going to fix this," I whispered. "But first, you're coming home." As we loaded her sketches into the car, I noticed the porch light flickering, a camera, Daniel's camera, blinking red. He'd been watching her. I smashed it with a rock. The sound echoed across the water like a gunshot. On the drive back, Lena clutched my hand. How could he do this to me? To us? I didn't answer. I was too busy planning the vintage of my revenge. Thursday dawned golden. The investor lunch was set for noon in the tasting room. Daniel had arranged everything: linen tablecloths, the '05 Magnum, a string quartet, and Elise, dressed in Lena's favorite emerald dress, scar hidden, smile practiced. I watched from the balcony as they arrived. Sleek suits, shark smiles. Daniel greeted them like a peacock. Elise on his arm. Maya squeezed my shoulder. Showtime tomorrow. Tonight, we prepare the cellar. We worked until midnight, moving barrels, setting tables, hiding Lena in the guest cottage with strict instructions. No lights. No calls. Wait for my signal. As I locked the cellar door, I paused by the '05 barrel. I opened the bung and inhaled. Black cherry, smoke, Richard's laughter. Tomorrow, I told the wine, we expose the corked vintage, and we let it breathe. I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch, notebook open, writing until the pen ran dry. They thought they could bottle my legacy in lies, but truth, like tannin, only grows stronger with time. The sea wind carried the scent of grapes, almost ready for harvest, almost ready for crushing. The guest cottage sat at the far edge of the vineyard, half swallowed by a hedge of rosemary that had grown wild since Richard stopped trimming it. I had not crossed its threshold in years. The last time was the night he died, when I carried his favorite sweater here because the house felt too large and the silence too sharp. Now it sheltered Lena, my Lena, the true one, while the counterfeit walked the tasting room in her skin. I pushed open the warped door at dusk, the hinges singing a low, mournful note. Inside, the air was thick with turpentine and the salt of unshed tears. Lena sat on the floorboards, knees drawn to her chest, surrounded by sketches that spilled like fallen leaves. The lantern on the table painted her face in gold and shadow. The scar beneath her ear caught the light, a pale crescent that no amount of makeup could erase from the woman who now wore her name. She did not look up when I entered. "He used to bring me coffee here," she said, voice raw from disuse. "Before sunrise, when the fog was still asleep on the water, he'd kiss my neck and say, 'Let's make something the world can't forget.'" Her laugh cracked like thin ice. I thought he meant the wine. I set the tray I carried. Warm bread, goat cheese, a bottle of the 21 Rosé on the small table beside her. The cork sighed free with a soft pop, the scent of strawberries and sea brine rising between us. "Eat," I said gently. "You'll need strength for what comes next." She shook her head. I keep seeing her, in the mirror of my mind, the way she tilts her head when she lies, the way she says my name like it belongs to her. Her fingers found a sketch, a label design, swirling vines around the words, "Shaw's Rest," "Eternal Harvest." I drew this the week before he sent me away. He told me the investors wanted something timeless. I believed him. I knelt beside her, the floorboards cool against my knees. "Belief is a vine, Lena. It climbs where you train it. He trained yours toward exile. Now we train it back." She lifted her gaze then, and I saw the storm gathering behind the green. Grief, yes, but also the first glint of fury. I want to watch him taste his own poison. "You will," I promised. "But first, we let him believe the cup is sweet." We worked through the night, the three of us, Maya arriving just after midnight, with a briefcase full of shadows and a thermos of coffee strong enough to wake the dead. The cottage became our war room. Butcher paper unrolled across the table like a battle map, timelines scrawled in red ink, passwords cracked like walnuts. Lena remembered everything, the way Daniel's childhood dog was named after a horse he never owned, the date of their first kiss beneath the old pergola, the exact shade of blue he hated in ties. Each detail was a key. Maya's fingers flew over her laptop. "He's running everything through a proxy server. Look, Your work email forwards to a dummy account he controls. Every approval, every design note, every investor call. He's been puppeteering you from the lake house. Lena's breath hitched. The video. The one on the website. That wasn't me. No, Maya said. But the world thinks it is. And tomorrow, they'll think it still. We let the silence settle, heavy as sediment in a barrel. Outside, the wind moved through the vines, a low hush like whispered secrets. I poured the rosé into 3 jelly jars, Richard's old camping set, and handed one to each of them. To clarity, I toasted. The wine was bright, almost effervescent, cutting through the bitterness in my throat. Lena drank, then set her jar down with deliberate care. I want to see her. The double. I need to know how perfect the lie is. I hesitated. The risk was a live wire, but I saw the need in her eyes. The same need I'd felt when I first held Richard's lifeless hand and refused to believe the heart could stop so suddenly. Some truths must be touched to be believed. Tomorrow, I said. At the investor lunch, you'll watch from the loft above the tasting room. But no sound, no movement. Not until I give the signal. She nodded, fierce. And after? After, Maya cut in. We serve the vintage he thinks he's already bottled. The plan unfolded like a well-aged story. Daniel had scheduled the lunch for noon. White truffles, the 05 Magnum, a string quartet playing Vivaldi beneath the pergola. He wanted spectacle. We would give him one he'd never forget. But first, the night. Lena could not stay still. She paced the cottage until the floorboards groaned, then slipped outside while I dozed in the rocking chair, exhaustion finally claiming me. I woke to the scent of crushed grapes and found her gone. Panic clawed my chest. I grabbed a lantern and followed the faint trail of bare footprints through the dew-slick grass. The vineyard swallowed me, rows of vines arching overhead like cathedral rafters, moonlight dripping silver from leaf to leaf. I found her in the Cabernet block, kneeling between the stakes, palms pressed to the earth as if listening for a heartbeat. I needed to remember, she said, when I reached her. Her voice was steady now, tempered. The soil doesn't lie. It remembers every footstep, every drop of sweat. Daniel forgot that. I knelt beside her. The dirt was cool, fragrant with life. He thinks legacy is a signature on a page, but it's this. I scooped a handful of loam, let it sift through my fingers. Roots deeper than greed. She took my hand, pressed it to her cheek. I'm scared, Ev. Not of him. Of what I might become when I see her wearing my life. I understood. I had looked in the mirror after Richard's death and seen a stranger. Eyes hollow, mouth set in a line I didn't recognize. Grief had remade me. Now betrayal would remake her. You'll become what you choose, I said, and you'll choose truth. We stayed there until the sky paled to pearl, the grapes around us swelling with the promise of dawn. When we returned to the cottage, Maya was asleep over her laptop, a half-eaten sandwich beside her. Lena covered her with a quilt, the gesture tender despite everything. Thursday arrived hot and breathless, the kind of day that makes the vines droop and tempers fray. The tasting room had been transformed. Linen tablecloths, the color of fresh cream, crystal stemware catching sunlight like prisms, the air thick with the scent of truffles and ambition. Daniel moved among the investors like a conductor, Elise on his arm in Lena's emerald dress, the scar concealed beneath layers of foundation so artful it might have fooled God. I watched from the loft, hidden behind a stack of old barrels. Lena crouched beside me, breath shallow. Below, the quartet played. Above, dust motes danced in the slanted light. There, I whispered, pointing. Elise laughed at something an investor said. The sound too bright, too rehearsed. She lifted a glass of the 05, inhaled with theatrical reverence. "Note the black cherry, the whisper of smoke," she said, parroting words Lena had written in her journals. Lena's nails dug into my wrist. "She's good," she breathed. "Too good." Daniel caught my eye across the room and lifted his glass in salute. I raised mine in return, the picture of maternal pride. Inside, my heart hammered like a press at full tilt. After the meal, he cornered me near the dessert table. "Mum, the papers, office, now. Let's make it official." I let him lead me, the agreement heavy in his hand like a loaded chalice. The office smelled of cedar and fear. He spread the document on the desk, pen poised. "Read it," I said. He waved a dismissive hand. "Lena vetted every clause. You trust her." I picked up the pen. The nib trembled, just enough. "With everything I have," I signed, slow, deliberate, the loops of my E and S as familiar as my own pulse. He exhaled, a sound of pure relief, and folded the page with reverent care. "Filed tonight," he said. "Tomorrow we announce the partnership. You'll see, Mum, this is the future." I tucked a copy into my pocket, the paper crisp against my fingers. "I can't wait." That night, the cottage glowed with lamplight and purpose. Maya laid the real agreement beside the forgery she'd had printed, identical down to the watermark, except my signature sat a fraction off center, the ink a shade lighter, a flaw only an expert would catch. And by the time an expert looked, it would be too late. Lena stared at the two documents, then at her own hands. "He'll know the moment he compares." "He won't compare," Maya said. "He's too busy counting money that isn't his yet." Lena opened her laptop. The promotional video played again. Her face, her voice, her dreams, all twisted into someone else's sales pitch. When it ended, she closed the lid with the finality of a coffin. "He didn't just steal my face," she said. "He stole my future." I took her shoulders, turned her to face me. "Then tomorrow, we give it back, and we make him choke on the past." We rehearsed until the words were muscle memory. Maya drilled entrances, timing, the exact moment Lena would step from the shadows. I practiced my rage, banking it like embers beneath ash, letting it warm without consuming. Lena practiced her laugh, the real one, the one that started deep in her belly and spilled out like sunlight on water. At 4 a.m., I walked the vines alone. The grapes were taut, skins thin as lies, ready to burst. I pressed one between my fingers. Juice ran down my wrist. Purple and sticky, I licked it clean. It tasted of earth and wrath and the long, slow patience of roots. Richard's voice drifted on the wind. "The best revenge is a harvest that outlives them all." I looked toward the cottage, where 2 lamps still burned. Inside, my daughter-in-law was becoming something forged in fire, and tomorrow we would pour that fire into a glass and watch Daniel drink. I did not sleep the night before the board meeting. Sleep felt like surrender, and surrender was a luxury I had buried with Richard. Instead, I walked the cellar alone, lantern in hand, the cool air thick with the breath of oak and fermenting ghosts. The barrels loomed like silent witnesses, each stamped with the year of its birth, 2005, 2012, 2019. I ran my palm across the staves the way a mother strokes a fevered brow, feeling for the pulse beneath. At the far end stood the barrel I had chosen for tomorrow's trap, a 2017 Syrah, high in sulfites, the one vintage Lena could not tolerate without her eyes watering and her throat closing like a fist. I had sealed it myself after the last racking, marking the bung with a single red wax tear. No one would open it until I gave the word. Upstairs, the house was quiet, but I knew Daniel was awake. I could feel his restlessness the way you feel a storm gathering over the sea. At 2:17 a.m., his study light flicked on. I stood in the hallway shadows and watched him pace, phone to his ear, voice a low hiss. Yes, the signature's filed. Mother's on board. Just keep the real one quiet until after the vote. A pause. Double the final payment. She's earned it. He ended the call and sank into his chair, head in his hands. For a moment he looked small. Then the mask slid back into place. And he was my son again, the one who had once begged me to let him drive the tractor, who had cried when the first frost killed the peach blossoms. I turned away before the ache in my chest could soften into forgiveness. Maya found me in the cellar at dawn. She carried 2 mugs of coffee and the forged transfer agreement folded into a crisp square. "The fund's legal team arrives at 10, she said. "They'll want to see the original before the vote. We swap it in the chaos of the toast?" I took the coffee, but did not drink. "And Lena? Ready? She's been practicing her entrance in the cottage mirror since 4. Says she wants him to see her eyes first. Before the scar, before the dress. Just the eyes." I nodded. Eyes were harder to fake than faces. We spent the morning transforming the wine cellar into a theater. Workers moved tables into a wide semicircle beneath the arched brick ceiling. I hung the old vineyard maps on the walls, Richard's hand-drawn, ink faded to sepia, until the room felt like a chapel of memory. Maya strung fairy lights along the rafters, soft enough to flatter, bright enough to expose. At the head of the table, I placed the 2017 Syrah, its wax seal gleaming like a drop of blood. At 9:45, the guests began to arrive. The investors, 3 men in charcoal suits, 1 woman with a platinum bob, stepped carefully down the stone stairs, their city shoes slipping on the damp. Daniel greeted them with handshakes and charm. Elise at his side, in a navy sheath dress that Lena had worn to last year's harvest dinner. The scar was hidden again, but I noticed the faint tremor in her left hand when she lifted a glass. I stood at the foot of the stairs, arms folded, the perfect hostess. "Welcome to the heart of Shaw's Rest," I said. "Today we taste the future." Daniel's eyes flicked to me, wary. "Mum, everything's set. Let's keep it moving." "Of course, darling." I smiled, the way a cat smiles at a canary. "I wouldn't dream of delaying destiny." The board members took their seats. Old Marco, the vineyard manager, Clara, our accountant, 2 silent partners who had invested with Richard decades ago. Maya sat at my right, laptop closed, fingers drumming a silent rhythm. Lena waited in the cottage, burner phone in hand, counting heartbeats until my text. At 10:15, I opened the first bottle, the 2019 Cabernet, velvet and honest. Glasses clinked. Praise flowed. Elise swirled, sniffed, pronounced it elegant yet approachable. The investors nodded. Daniel relaxed by degrees. Then I stood. "Before we vote on the new partnership, a tradition, the signature vintage." I gestured to the 2017 Syrah. "Lena, would you do the honors?" Elise rose, smoothing her dress. She approached the barrel with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed this moment in a dozen hotel mirrors. I handed her the thief, the long glass pipette used to draw samples. Her fingers brushed mine. They were ice. She plunged the thief into the bunghole, drew up a measure of the dark liquid, and poured it into her glass. The scent rose sharp, black pepper, sulfur, a chemical bite. I watched her throat work as she lifted the glass. "To Shaw's Rest," she toasted and drank. For a moment, nothing. Then her eyes widened, watered. She coughed once, delicately, into her napkin. The investors frowned. Daniel leaned forward. "Lena." "I'm fine," she said, voice strained. "Just robust." I smiled. Robust indeed. Lena's always had a sensitive palate, especially to sulfites. Her gaze snapped to mine. The tremor in her hand became a shake. She set the glass down too hard. Wine sloshed over the rim like blood. Daniel stood. Mom, perhaps we should vote? I finished. Yes, but first, a small presentation. I nodded to Maya. The lights dimmed. A projector hummed to life against the brick wall. The first slide, 2 access card photos side by side. Same face, different earrings, same timestamp. Gasps rippled through the room. Next slide, signatures. L. Shaw in 2 distinct hands. Next, bank transfers. $25,000 to Elise Moreau. $50,000, $100,000, a trail of desperation. Daniel's face drained of color. This is a mistake. No, I said softly. The mistake was thinking I wouldn't notice my own daughter-in-law breathing in 2 places at once. I texted Lena. Now. The cellar door creaked open. Footsteps descended the stairs. Slow, deliberate. Every head turned. Lena appeared in the archway, barefoot, wearing the paint-splattered overalls she'd lived in at the lake house. Her hair was wild, her scar stark against pale skin. She carried no glass, no smile, only truth. "Hello, Daniel," she said, her voice carried to the rafters, clear as a bell in frost. "Miss me?" Elise dropped her glass. It shattered on the stone floor, wine spreading like a wound. The room froze. 2 women, identical yet worlds apart, stood beneath the fairy lights, one trembling, one steady as the vines outside. Daniel took a step back, chair scraping. "Lena, I can explain." "Start with the lake house," she said. "Start with the lies. You fed me like poisoned honey." I raised my hand. Silence fell. "The vote," I said, "is postponed. Indefinitely." The investors exchanged glances. The woman with the platinum bob stood. "Mrs. Shaw, we'll need to review everything," I interrupted, "starting with the forgery your team received this morning." I slid the duplicate agreement across the table. "My real signature is on the document Daniel filed. This one? A clever copy. Check the ink. Check the alignment. Check your consciences." Daniel lunged for the papers. Maya intercepted, her hand on his wrist like a cuff. "Sit down, brother. The adults are talking." Old Marco rose, apron still dusted with yesterday's grapes. "I've known you since you were knee-high, Daniel." "This?" He gestured to the shattered glass, the 2 Lenas, the stunned investors. "This ain't wine. This is vinegar." Elise sank into a chair, makeup streaking with tears. "I didn't know," she whispered. "He said it was marketing. A stunt." Lena crossed the room until she stood before her double. "You wore my wedding ring," she said quietly. "You slept in my bed. You let him touch you with my face." Elise flinched as if struck. "I'm sorry. Sorry," Lena repeated, tasting the word. "Keep it. You'll need it where you're going." I turned to the investors. "Gentlemen, madam, Shaw's Rest is not for sale. Not today. Not ever." They filed out in silence, shoes crunching on broken glass. Daniel tried to follow. Maya blocked the stairs. "Not yet." When the last suit disappeared, I faced my son. The lantern light carved shadows into his cheeks. He looked a decade older than yesterday. "How could you?" I asked. My voice did not shake. It was the voice I used to call workers in from the fields. The voice that had once soothed Richard through fever. The voice that had sung Daniel to sleep when nightmares came. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I was drowning, Mum. The debts. You let them drown us all. Lena stepped beside me. You used me to save yourself, but I'm still here, and I remember how to swim. Elise stood, legs unsteady. I'll tell the police everything. The payments, the scripts, the lake house, all of it. Daniel stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. You can't. I can, she said, and I will. The cellar felt suddenly too small, the air too thick. I opened the door at the top of the stairs. Dawn light spilled down, pink and forgiving. "Daniel," I said, "pack a bag. You have until sunset." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the boy again, scared, lost, reaching for a mother who was no longer there to catch him. "Mom." "Go." He went. Lena and I stood in the doorway as his car roared to life and disappeared down the gravel road. Dust settled in its wake like a sigh. Maya joined us, arms crossed. "The police will want statements. The fund will sue. It's going to be a mess." I looked out at the vines, heavy with fruit almost ready for harvest. "Messes can be cleaned. Lies can't." Lena slipped her hand into mine. "What happens now?" "Now," I said, "we make wine. The real kind. The kind that tells the truth." Behind us, Elise gathered her purse, tears cutting channels through her makeup. She paused at the threshold. "Mrs. Shaw, I know you won't believe me, but I'm sorry for all of it." I met her eyes, hazel, not green, but human all the same. "Redemption," I said, "starts with confession. Finish it with the police. Then maybe, one day, you'll taste forgiveness. It's an acquired vintage." She nodded and left, footsteps fading into the morning. The three of us, Lena, Maya, and I, stood in the quiet cellar, surrounded by barrels that had seen worse storms. I opened the 2005 Magnum, the one Richard had saved for a day that mattered. We drank in silence. The wine was perfect, black cherry, smoke, a finish that lingered like memory. Outside, the sun climbed higher, gilding the vines. Inside, the truth settled into the stones, patient as sediment, waiting to be bottled. The cellar had become a tomb, and I was its keeper. The air was so thick with betrayal I could taste it, metallic, like blood on the tongue after a slap. Every breath scraped my lungs. The lantern flames trembled, as if afraid to witness what came next. Sergeant Alvarez descended the stone stairs with the solemnity of a priest entering a crypt. Her boots struck each step like a heartbeat, slowing to its final rhythm. When she removed her cap, the gesture felt like the unveiling of a gravestone. "Mrs. Shaw," she said, voice soft but unyielding, "Elise Moreau is upstairs. She's ready to bleed the truth." I did not answer at first. I was staring at the shattered glass on the floor. Wine and crystal mingled like a sacrifice no god had asked for. Lena stood beside it, barefoot, paint splattered, her scar a raw slash of white against skin flushed with rage and grief. Her eyes, those green, storm-torn eyes, were fixed on the doorway, waiting for the woman who had worn her life like a second skin. "Let her come," Lena said, and the words tore from her throat like thorns. "Let her walk the path she forced me to crawl." Maya moved to the stairs, a silent sentinel. I stayed by the 2005 Magnum, its empty throat gaping. My fingers closed around the cork until the edges bit into my palm. Pain was grounding. Pain was honest. Elise appeared between the officers, wrists free, but soul shackled. The makeup was gone. Her face was a ruin of tears and truth. The scar she had hidden for weeks was irrelevant now, just a mark on a stranger. She looked at Lena and crumpled inward, as if the sight of the real woman was a physical blow. Daniel was not with them. He had fled at sunset, tires screaming like a soul in torment. I had watched the taillights vanish and felt nothing, not even the hollow ache of a mother's love dying, only the cold, clean certainty of justice. Elise's voice was a broken bell. "I'll tell you everything, every lie he fed me, every script he made me memorize until I dreamed in Lena's voice. I thought it was a role, a paycheck. I didn't know there was a woman locked in a lake house, painting her prison walls with sketches of a life being stolen." Lena stepped forward until their breaths mingled. The air crackled with the weight of stolen mornings. borrowed wedding rings, counterfeit kisses. "You wore my anniversary earrings," Lena hissed, each word a blade. "You told a reporter they were vintage chic while I sat alone, wondering why my husband's texts had gone cold." Elise's knees buckled. She would have fallen if the officer hadn't caught her. "I kept them in a velvet pouch," she sobbed. "I thought if I wore something real, the lie wouldn't choke me." Sergeant Alvarez opened her notebook, but her eyes never left Lena's face. "We'll need the financials. Every dollar, every deception." Maya slid the folder across the table like a guillotine. "It's all here. Emails that curdle the blood. Voice memos of Daniel promising Elise a future while he buried his wife in solitude. The forged transfer agreement, filed with the fund this morning. And this." She produced the duplicate, the one with the misaligned signature. "The original is in your evidence locker. This is what they received. They'll see the lie by dawn." The young officer took the folder with reverence. "Statements," he said, "from all of you." Lena's laugh was a shard of glass. "Just Lena Shaw. The hyphen was his cage." I spoke then, and my voice was the sound of a vineyard burning. "Take her upstairs. The office has better light, and coffee strong enough to scald the soul." They led Elise away. Her footsteps were the sound of a woman walking to her own execution. At the top of the stairs, she paused, voice barely a whisper. "Mrs. Shaw, the 2005, it tasted like forgiveness I'll never earn." I did not answer. Some words are too late to matter. When they were gone, the cellar imploded into silence. Lena sank onto a barrel, her body folding like a vine snapped by wind. Maya poured her a measure of the Magnum, but Lena's hands shook too violently to hold it. I took the glass from her, pressed it to her lips myself. She drank, choked, drank again. The wine stained her mouth like blood. "He's gone," she whispered. "My husband, my future, gone." "For now," Maya said, voice steel. "Fraud charges will drag him back in chains. The fund's lawyers are already sharpening their knives." I moved to the wall of maps, tracing the inked rows Richard had drawn the year Daniel was born. My finger trembled over the Cabernet block where my son had once fallen from a ladder, laughing, unafraid. "He'll fight," I said. "He always did. Remember the peach scion he grafted onto the grapevine? He wanted fruit that tasted like both summer and autumn. He cried for a week when it died." Lena's sob was a wounded animal. "I thought he loved this place." "He loved what it could buy him," I said, and the words were acid on my tongue. We let the memory rot between us, neither sweet nor bitter, just the stench of decay. Upstairs, the statements were a crucifixion. I spoke of the first lie, Thomas's sighting, the scar that vanished and reappeared like a ghost, the signatures that curled wrong, the access cards with mismatched earrings. Lena spoke of the lake house nights, the forwarded emails, the growing terror that her life was a puppet show and she was the marionette. Maya laid out the legal architecture of the deception like a coroner displaying a corpse. When the officers left, Elise in the cruiser, the vineyard was cloaked in a darkness so complete it felt like the end of the world. I stood on the terrace, the Magnum's empty bottle at my feet, and screamed into the void. The sound tore from my chest, like a vine ripped from the earth, roots and all. Lena and Maya flanked me, their hands on my shoulders, anchoring me to the ground. "I keep waiting to feel empty," Lena said, voice raw. "But I feel full, full of rage, full of grief, full of a future I have to build with my own hands." Maya poured the 2012 Reserve, Richard's favorite. "To full," she toasted, and her voice cracked on the word. We drank. The wine was a storm in a glass, velvet and thunder, a love letter from a dead man to the women who survived him. Below us, the vines thrashed in the rising wind, Somewhere, a coyote screamed, answered by another, life clawing its way back from the brink. "I'm staying," Lena said, fierce. "Not for him. For this." She swept her arm across the darkness. "For us." I set my glass down. "The board needs a new CFO. The labels need your soul again." Maya grinned through tears. "And I'm moving my practice here. Someone has to keep the wolves at bay." We stood until the stars bled into dawn. 3 women forged in fire, the vineyard breathing around us like a beast waking from nightmare. Later, I found Elise's velvet pouch on the office desk. The anniversary earrings glinted inside, small diamonds catching the lamplight like tears frozen mid-fall. I slipped them into my pocket. Not forgiveness, just the possibility of a day when pain might transmute into something else. In the cellar, I opened the 2017 Syrah again. I poured a measure into a clean glass and inhaled the sulfur, the pepper, the bite of truth. Then I carried it to the crush pad where the moon silvered the concrete. I raised the glass to the night. "To the lies that almost aged into legacy," I said, voice breaking, "and to the women who crushed them underfoot." I poured the wine onto the ground. It soaked into the cracks, dark as blood, gone in seconds. The earth drank it without judgment. Behind me, Lena and Maya watched, silhouettes against the open door. None of us spoke. Some moments are too vast for language. They need only the howl of wind through vines and the certainty of a dawn that will not be denied. I turned back to them, the empty glass a wound in my hand. "Tomorrow," I said, "we harvest at first light. The grapes are swollen with truth, and so are we." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of salt and redemption. Somewhere, a new vintage was already beginning to scream. The confession came at 3:14 a.m., not in the cellar, not in the office, but in the vineyard itself. Under a sky so black it swallowed every star and gave nothing back. Daniel had returned without a sound, the way a thief returns to the scene of his crime to see if the blood has washed away. I found him between the Cabernet rows, on his knees in the dirt, hands buried to the wrists, like a penitent begging the earth for absolution it would never grant. I had been walking the aisles again, barefoot, the cold loam kissing my soles when I saw the silhouette. At first, I thought it was a scarecrow, one of the old ones Richard had dressed in his own shirts to keep the crows from the ripening fruit. Then the silhouette moved, shoulders shaking with sobs that tore through the night like a blade through silk. I did not call out. I did not run. I walked the row until I stood over him, the moon finally breaking free to silver his hair and the tears carving canyons down his cheeks. He did not look up. He was whispering to the soil, words I could not catch, but the cadence was a child's prayer. "Please, please, please." "Daniel." His name left my lips like a verdict. He flinched as if I had struck him, but still did not raise his head. "I couldn't leave," he rasped. "Not like this. Not with you hating me." "Hate is too small a word," I said. My voice was the low growl of thunder before it breaks. "You didn't just betray me. You betrayed the dirt under your knees. The vines your father bled for. The woman who loved you enough to believe your lies." He lifted his face then. It was a ruin. Eyes swollen, mouth trembling. The handsome lines I had traced with pride now twisted into something unrecognizable. "I was drowning, Mum. The cards, the horses, the loans. Every night I woke up choking on numbers. I thought if I could just get us over this one hump." "Us?" I laughed, and the sound was a whip crack. "There was no us in your plan, only you and her." I gestured toward the lake house road, though it was miles away. "Elise was your mirror, Daniel. You saw yourself in her greed and thought it was ambition." He tried to stand, but his legs betrayed him. He stayed on his knees, hands still buried in the earth. I never meant for Lena to suffer. The lake house was supposed to be a retreat, a gift. I told myself she needed the break. Stop. The word cracked like a vine snapping under frost. You locked her away and sent a stranger to wear her wedding ring. You let that stranger sign my legacy away, while the real Lena painted her prison walls with dreams you were selling to the highest bidder. His sob was a wounded animal. I know, God, I know. When I saw her in the cellar, both of them, standing there like judgment and mercy in the same breath, I felt my heart stop. I wanted to die right there on the stone. But you didn't, I said. You ran, like the coward you've become. He clawed at the dirt, fingers bleeding. I came back to confess, to beg, to give you everything. The accounts, the passwords, the names of every shark I owe. Take it all. Take the vineyard. Take my name. Just don't take your love. The plea hung between us, fragile as a soap bubble. I felt it pop against my skin, leaving only the sting of salt. My love was never yours to take, I said. It was yours to earn, and you spent it like loose change on blackjack tables and lies. I knelt then, not in forgiveness, but in fury, my hands joining his in the soil. Our fingers brushed, mother and son, earth and blood, and for a heartbeat, I felt the boy he had been, the one who had fallen asleep on my lap during harvest dinners, grape juice staining his cheeks like war paint. Then I remembered the man who had caged Lena, who had forged my name, who had tried to sell Richard's ghost for a handful of silver. I dug my nails into the dirt until they filled with loam. Confess, I said. Not to me, to her. He looked up, confused. Headlights cut through the darkness. Maya's SUV, Lena in the passenger seat. They had seen him from the terrace, had known he would crawl back like a dog to its vomit. The car stopped at the edge of the block. Doors opened. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Lena stepped into the moonlight, and the sight of her was a blade to my heart. She wore Richard's old work shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow, the scar on her left ear catching the light like a brand. Her eyes were dry now, but the skin around them was bruised with sleepless nights. She carried no weapon, only truth. Daniel tried to stand again. This time he managed it, swaying like a vine in high wind. Lena, he choked. I don't, she said. The single word was a door slamming. You don't get to say my name until you've earned it back with every breath you have left. He fell to his knees again, this time before her. I was going to fix it. After the deal closed, I was going to bring you home, pay off the debts, give you the world. I had the world, she said, voice trembling with the effort to stay steady. I had a husband who kissed me goodnight and meant it. I had a mother-in-law who trusted me with her legacy. I had sketches that weren't props in your con. You took it all and left me with silence. Maya stood behind her, arms crossed, a silent storm. I rose slowly, dirt cascading from my hands like dark rain. Confess, I said again. All of it. To the police, to the board, to the vines that watched you grow. He nodded, tears cutting clean paths through the grime on his face. I will. Tomorrow, first light. I'll turn myself in. I'll sign whatever you need. Just tell me there's a way back. Lena looked at him for a long moment, and I saw the war inside her. Love and loathing braided so tight they might never untangle. Then she knelt too, until their faces were inches apart. She reached out, not to touch him, but to pluck a single grape from the vine above his head. It was swollen, ready to burst. This, she said, holding it between them, is what trust looks like before it's crushed. You squeezed it dry, Daniel, and now you'll live with the stain. She crushed the grape in her fist. Juice ran down her wrist, dark as blood, and dripped onto his upturned face. He did not flinch. He closed his eyes and let it mark him. I turned away. The wind had shifted, carrying the scent of rain and the faint, sweet rot of overripe fruit. Behind me, Daniel's confession spilled out like wine from a broken barrel. Every debt, every lie, every moment he had chosen greed over family. Lena listened without moving. Maya recorded it on her phone, evidence for the dawn. When he finished, the silence was absolute. Even the coyotes had stopped their howling. Lena stood. "You'll leave before sunrise," she said. "You'll sign the papers Maya prepares. You'll face the courts. And you'll never set foot on this land again without my permission. That is the only mercy you'll get from me." He nodded, broken. "And from you, Mum?" I looked at him then, really looked, and saw only the husk of the boy I had carried for 9 months, the man I had taught to tie his shoes with grapevines. "My mercy," I said, "is that I will not curse your name when I teach my grandchildren to walk these rows. That is all." He bowed his head. The grape juice on his face had dried to a bruise. Lena turned to me, and in her eyes I saw the future, fierce, unapologetic, rooted deep. "Let's go home," she said. We left him there, kneeling in the dirt, the vineyard closing ranks around him, like a jury delivering its verdict. As we walked away, the first raindrops fell, soft as forgiveness we would never give. They washed the juice from the leaves, but not from his skin. Behind us, Daniel's sobs faded into the storm. Ahead, the house lights glowed, warm, defiant, alive. The confession was over. The reckoning had only just begun. The rain came down in sheets at 4:47 a.m., a baptism no one had asked for, but everyone needed. It hammered the tin roof of the press house, drummed on the barrels, soaked the vineyard until every leaf trembled with the weight of it. I stood on the terrace in nothing but Richard's old oilskin, face tilted to the sky, letting the water scour the night from my skin. Behind me, the house was dark except for one lamp in the kitchen, Lena's silhouette, moving like a ghost who had decided to stay. Daniel was gone. Maya had driven him to the county lockup herself, the confession recorded, signed, witnessed. He had not looked back. The taillights had disappeared into the storm the way childhood disappears into memory, sudden, irreversible, leaving only the echo of a slammed door. I did not cry. I had spent every tear in the vineyard hours earlier, when Lena crushed that grape and marked him with its blood. What was left in me now was something harder than grief, something forged in the crucible of betrayal and tempered by the rain. It felt like the moment before the first grape is pressed. Pressure building, sweetness and acid balanced on a knife's edge, the promise of wine or vinegar hanging in the air. Lena appeared beside me, barefoot, hair plastered to her skull, Richard's shirt clinging to her like a second skin. She carried 2 mugs. Steam curled from them despite the downpour. Coffee, black as the night we had just survived. "He asked me to give you this," she said, handing me a folded square of paper. Daniel's handwriting. Shaky, urgent. I did not open it. I let the rain dissolve the ink until the words bled into nothing, then let the wind take the pulp. "He's not my son anymore," I said. The words should have broken me. Instead, they felt like pruning a diseased vine. Painful, necessary, the only way to save the rest. Lena sipped her coffee, eyes on the horizon where the storm was beginning to thin. "He never was, Ev. Not really. We just loved the idea of him." The truth of it struck like lightning. I gripped the railing until the wood groaned. Somewhere below, a barrel overflowed, rainwater mixing with the dregs of yesterday's Syrah. The scent rose, sulfur, earth, redemption. At 5:30, the rain softened to a mist. Maya joined us, hair dripping, eyes bright with the fever of a lawyer who has just won a war. Charges filed. Elise turned state's evidence. The funds pulling out. Public apology by noon. Shaw's rest is yours, all of it. No liens, no shadows. I nodded. The victory tasted like ash and honey. Lena set her mug down. I'm changing the labels, she said. No more Daniel's Reserve. No more ghosts on the bottles. Just the year, the block, the truth. Maya grinned, fierce. And I'm staying. In-house counsel, permanent. The cottage is mine now. We stood there, 3 women soaked to the bone, the vineyard spreading before us like a battlefield after the guns have gone silent. The grapes hung heavy, skins split by the storm, juice beating like tears. Harvest would start at dawn, whether we were ready or not. I went inside first. The kitchen was warm, the stove ticking as it cooled. On the table sat my notebook. Leather cracked, pages swollen with rain and ink. I opened it to the last entry, written in the dark after Daniel's confession. They thought they could bottle my legacy and lies. But truth, like tannin, only grows stronger with time. I tore the page out, crumpled it, fed it to the stove's dying embers. The paper flared, curled, became ash. Then I took a fresh sheet and wrote in a hand that did not shake. Not every wine sweetens with time, and not every bloodline is true. But only when filtered can truth become as clear as aged wine. I left the notebook open to dry. At 6:12, the sun broke through, a thin, defiant blade of gold slicing the clouds. The mist rose from the vines like incense. Lena and Maya were already in the crush pad. Boots on, knives sharp, workers gathering with the quiet reverence of people who have witnessed a miracle and know better than to speak of it. I joined them. The first cluster I cut was perfect, Cabernet, tight, fragrant, the stem snapping clean. Juice ran down my wrist. Warm as blood, I pressed it to my lips. It tasted of salt and storm and the future. Lena worked beside me, her strokes sure, her laughter starting low in her belly and spilling out like sunlight. Maya sang an old harvest song, off-key, defiant, alive. The workers joined in, voices rising over the snip of shears and the thud of fruit into bins. By noon, the storm was a memory. The crush pad steamed in the heat, purple rivers running between our feet. I looked up to see Elise standing at the edge of the vineyard, a deputy beside her, ankle monitor glinting. She had come to return the anniversary earrings. She held them out in trembling hands. Lena took them without a word, slipped them into her pocket. Then, to everyone's shock, she hugged Elise, fierce, brief, the embrace of 2 women who had been pawns in the same game and chosen at different endings. Elise sobbed into Lena's shoulder, the sound muffled by the roar of the press. When they parted, Elise whispered, "Thank you." Lena's answer was a nod. "Go make your own vintage." Elise left with the deputy, her footsteps light on the gravel. She did not look back. By dusk, the first fermenters were full. The air was thick with the scent of yeast and possibility. I stood on the terrace again, this time with a glass of the 2005, our anniversary vintage, the one Richard had saved for a day that mattered. Lena and Maya flanked me, glasses raised. "To the women who stayed," I said. "To the truth that survived," Lena added. "To the harvest that outlives us all," Maya finished. We drank. The wine was perfect. Black cherry, smoke, a finish that lingered like forgiveness earned the hard way. Below us, the vineyard glowed in the last light, rows upon rows of vines heavy with fruit and memory. Somewhere in the distance, a new barrel was being toasted, its staves singing as they bent to the cooper's will. I opened my notebook one last time. The ink had dried into something permanent. I added a final line beneath the quote. And in the quiet morning of the next harvest, we began again. 3 women, 1 legacy, no lies left to ferment. I closed the book. The sun slipped below the horizon, painting the sea blood red. Lena slipped her hand into mine. Maya took the other. We did not speak. We did not need to. The vines spoke for us, rustling, alive, rooted deep in the truth we had fought to keep. The new dawn had come, and we were ready to bottle it. If this story of betrayal, truth, and the fierce women who reclaimed their legacy moved you, hit that like button to let me know. Subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next chapter in our vineyard of real-life dramas. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Evelyn's boots? And share this video with someone who needs to remember that roots run deeper than lies. Thank you for harvesting this tale with us. See you at the next crush.